Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thank you so much for tuning in here on Thursday, October 26th. Right now, Jaguars at Steelers, getting into our game preview for Week 8, an old AFC Central rivalry. There was a time when Steelers were public enemy number one for Jaguars fans, and they're still probably close to the top of that list. But the Jaguars, they have had some incredible seasons against the Steelers. Only team to beat the Steelers twice in Pittsburgh in the same year, and the Jaguars have done that twice in 2017 and 2007. They beat the Steelers in the regular season in Pittsburgh and in the postseason in Pittsburgh. But those games of the past, they matter very little for this contest. The Jaguars are 5-2. The Steelers are 4-2. Big AFC showdown here. The Steelers obviously already had their bye week. The Jaguars have their bye week following this Week 8 contest. The Jags, they're looking to keep pace in the AFC seeding race at the top of the conference, while the Steelers are trying to keep pace within their own division right now with the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers, they're a team that wants to muck it up. They want to play a dirty, ugly, low-scoring game. I honestly think the Saints were a pretty good matchup to get you ready for this one if you're the Jaguars. They kind of play a similar brand of football, have some similarities on both sides of the ball between these two teams, the Saints and the Steelers. So I think that it was a good warm-up. The Jags, again, they took down the Saints on Thursday Night Football, so they've had a mini bye week, while the Steelers, they just beat the Rams in Los Angeles in the late window on Sunday. So Steelers are definitely at a little bit of a rest disadvantage. I wouldn't worry about it or get crazy fired up about it if you're a Jaguar fan that you had a little mini bye week. I mean, it does give you a little bit of extra time, I think, to get more healthy. Obviously, the Jaguars have been dealing with some injuries. They're trying to get some guys back. Everybody practiced in some manner on Wednesday for the Jaguars outside of Zay Jones, who's still dealing with the knee injury. We'll see how those injuries play out. But the Jaguars are 2.5-point road favorites with an over-under of 41.5. Let's get into it here. Looking at the Jaguars offense versus the Steelers defense. This, like last week, this is the big time matchup here. You're talking about the Jaguars offense trying to put up points on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers boast an excellent overall defense when you talk about their 8th in DVOA. They're allowing 21 points per game in 2023. A fearsome pass rush, right? They like to heat you up. They like to send extra rushers at you, and they have just incredibly talented guys up front. TJ Watt may be the best pass rusher in the league, certainly top 5. Alex Highsmith has come on over the last couple years in a big way out of Charlotte, former third-round pick who just got paid this offseason, a guy that I'm a big fan of. Marcus Golden, they brought over in free agency from the Arizona Cardinals to assist as well. Then they have Nick Herbig. They got in the draft from Wisconsin. Keanu Benton in the middle, they also got in the draft from Wisconsin. They've got some other guys, DeMarvin Leal, Adams, Larry Ogunjobi, Watts. No Cameron Hayward, who is on IR, so he's certainly one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game today. They will be without him, but it's still a loaded defensive line. There's no doubt about that in my mind. At linebacker, that's a group that kind of saw a bunch of change and turnover throughout the offseason, moving parts, but right now they've got Cole Holcomb and Quan Alexander, with Landon Roberts getting some run as well at off-ball linebacker. Levi Wallace and Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Peterson, your top 3 corners there in Pittsburgh. JPJ probably playing at the highest level of those 3 guys right now, but he's not been consistently deployed. You've seen more Patrick Peterson and more Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace, however, is dealing with an injury, did not participate in practice on Wednesday for the Steelers, so you could be seeing a ton of JPJ, and he did play a lot in their Week 7 win over the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, Minkah Fitzpatrick is still back there at safety. They've got Keanu O'Neal as well, DeMonte Casey. Minkah, he can change a game in a flash. One of the best players on the back end and the secondary in the league. I don't think he's been surrounded with the best talent in 2023 around him. So not his best year so far, but still a guy who can absolutely change the game in a flash. They play a lot of man coverage in Pittsburgh. Fitzpatrick, as I mentioned, he's a stud that can change it. JPJ, really good man coverage, good length. Obviously, the son of Joey Porter Sr. Joey Porter Jr. is a guy that just plays with great length, great tenacity, really was a fit for what Pittsburgh likes to do. I think that he will be in the lineup a ton for them this week. Again, Levi Wallace dealing with some injury. Now, when it comes to stopping the run, the Steelers have been straight up awful. Awful. 4.7 yards per carry allowed and almost 150 yards per game allowed on the ground for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hello, Travis Etienne. This is a running back who has been on a scoring tear. 6 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, 2 touchdowns in each game, 7 total touchdowns on the year for Travis Etienne. He's running hard. He is slippery, tough to hold on to, tough to get to the ground, great contact balance, obviously speed, elusiveness, quickness in the open field. I think that he could be in for a really big day in Pittsburgh. I also think you can attack this secondary as well. I mentioned they like to run a lot of man coverage. You're looking at if Levi Wallace plays, I think you can target him. Keanu Neal, Patrick Peterson. He played pretty well in Minnesota last year in their zone defense, but not having quite the same success so far in Pittsburgh in a man-heavy defense. When they're in single coverage, I think you can attack those linebackers as well with Evan Ingram. So I think there's some areas you can definitely attack with this defense. Again, the run game, getting the ball out quick, I think, with Trevor Lawrence to negate that pass rush that's led by TJ Watt and all those guys. I think that Trevor Lawrence, he got the ball out incredibly quickly last week against the New Orleans Saints. He's been doing it all year for the most part. I think he does it again against the Steelers, and that makes it difficult for those pass rushers to get home, makes them frustrated, and then you can also lean on Travis Etienne in this running game. I think their defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, is dependent on pressures, pass rush. I think if you negate that, you're going to do just fine against this defense. I know the Steelers beat the Ravens, held them to just 10 points a few weeks ago, but that was on the back of 7 drops by the Ravens receivers and 2 lost fumbles. I do not expect the Jaguars receivers to drop 7 passes in this one, even though the forecast does call for rain. I just don't see that happening. The one thing that this defense does well is beyond, being an aggressive pressure defense is they force turnovers, and some of that pressure goes into forcing turnovers. They have 12 on the year so far. The Jaguars have 16, so they are in 4th place right now in turnovers forced. So that's another area to keep an eye on. And looking at the Jaguars defense versus Steelers offense, it's kind of like last week with the Steelers offense. It's not the same conceptually, but they have a lot of talent at their skill positions, but the offense just looks uninspired, similar to the New Orleans Saints. Matt Canada at OC, he is the most hated man in Pittsburgh right now. You've got people constantly calling for his head, wanting him to be fired as their offensive coordinator, and it's pretty understandable why, right? The picture for the Steelers offense, it's pretty clear. Defenses understand how they're trying to attack them, what they're doing on a given play. They're not building off concepts. They're not using motion creatively. They do use motion, but it's not very creative. It's pretty indicative of what they're going to do. And they don't use a ton of tendency breakers like good offenses generally do. It's just an offense that, again, feels uninspired. They do have talented pass catchers, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin's a speedster from the slot. Of course, Allen Robinson is there as well. We all know and love Allen Robinson from his days in Duval. A lot of people wanted him to be around a lot longer. Hasn't been quite the career that he probably would have hoped for since leaving Chicago, but Allen Robinson, we'll be able to see him in this one as well. Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren in the backfield. I think it's a good 1-2 punch overall. Not the most dangerous backfield on the planet, but a good couple running backs that I think the Jaguars run defenders will need to be keying on. And of course, the Jaguars have one of the very best run defenses in the NFL, one of the best defenses in the NFL, period. They are 4th in defensive DVOA, 6 against the run, 6 against the pass. So this is a defense that has just been playing at an extremely high level for the Jaguars. But getting back to the Steelers' weapons, you've got Pat Freiermuth, of course, at tight end, Darnell Washington as well. Looking at their quarterback, Kenny Pickett, 2nd-year kid, not playing great. But it's hard to fully blame him when you look at the passing game concepts, you look at the overall offense, you look at the lack of protection up front. They have a porous offensive line when it comes to pass protection. It's hard to judge this kid too harshly right now, but the way the Steelers are playing on the offensive side of the ball, he's not getting the job done at a high level, and there's not a lot of guys getting the job done at a high level around him either. So it's tough. Pretty much any way you slice it, the Steelers have one of the worst offenses in the NFL, certainly in the bottom third of the league in offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that does bode well for the Jaguars. Overall thoughts, again, there is rain in the forecast for Pittsburgh, so that'll be something to monitor. I think the Jaguars have dealt with rain a little bit better since that Philly debacle when there was the remnants of a monsoon coming through there in Philadelphia, but certainly something to keep an eye on. Look, The Jaguars, they are the better team in this one. But the Steelers, they're the type of team, as evidenced by their 4-2 record, that can squeeze you on defense and make it tough in the passing game when they have the pressure packages going, when TJ Watt gets going. They're a team that can force turnovers. They're a team that can beat you if you do not come to play. But again, the Jaguars, on paper, much better football team on both sides of the ball, quite frankly. I think if you get the ball out quick like Trevor Lawrence does, you get it to Travis Etienne as well in the running game, I think you'll be just fine on offense. I really do. And even though this is a man-heavy Pittsburgh defense, I do think that you could see more Calvin Ridley in this game than you've seen the last couple of weeks, just by virtue of the matchups that they're going to have. Now, could the Steelers roll coverage towards Calvin Ridley like the Saints did, like a lot of teams have done? Yes. And if that's the case, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram all day, they're going to be able to eat. You're hoping to be able to get Zay Jones back, but looks unlikely at this point with him not practicing on Wednesday. Maybe you just get him back following the bye week. We'll see how that plays out. But again, defensively for the Jaguars, you have one of the best defenses in the league. You're going up against an offense with talent, but not much creativity, not much production. You should be able to go get the job done. Again, as long as you bring your A game, as long as you bring your focus. And the Jaguars, they have looked like an extremely focused team over the last month when they've won 4 straight games after an embarrassing loss to the Houston Texans. One more game, you get to your full bye week. You've had your little mini bye week following TNF. One more game, go get a win, get to your bye week, get prepped up for the second half of the season, get to 6-2. I think you'll be able to get some guys back healthy during the bye week and really prepare for this stretch run in 2023. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. Follow Generation Jaguar at Generation Jag. Hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Notification bell so you don't miss a show. And of course, check out genjag.com/shop. Pick up some new Duval gear. Y'all have a good one.